Okay, so Black History Month 2026 is ending, and I don't think we should be fighting with each other. And I mean that in the most respectful way possible. This isn't black man, black woman, and other sitting down and spitting vitriol back and forth online so white people can jeer and laugh at us. No, this is a more complicated issue, and frankly, it has to do with static, or static shock to some of the casuals. Okay, look, in all honesty, this is going to be a longer video, so if you're on the government spy network known as TikTok, go ahead and ×2 that. And if you're on the app that used to care about content creators before they became money printing machines bowing down at the feet of Mr. Beast, put it on in the background. And then frankly, if you're on the app owned by the Android pretending to be human, you're probably not going to see this anyway, so I'm not really worried about what y'all want to do, but do what y'all gotta do. It is 2026. Give your data to the Chinese government like the rest of us. Okay, so during this video, I'm going to show you how nuanced this entire conversation is, because there are a lot of moving parts that led to me making this. So if you are on the red play button, I will have the links to these videos so you can go ahead and see them for yourself. If you are new here, hi, I'm an upcoming author, otherwise known as MB Smith III. I am the author of The Silent Angel Chronicles, an urban Christian fantasy series about a group of angels who have been punished to spend one life on Earth protecting humanity from demons. But in my spare time, I also talk about my favorite media with all of you. So if you like what I'm doing and you haven't followed me yet, you know where the buttons are. I'm not going to insult you and pretend like this is your first day on the internet. So right now, if you haven't heard, there is a push for a specific comic book in the black community, and that would be the new history of the DC Universe, the Dakota Incident. There is so much going on with this book, it's not even funny. It's the fact that Static has not appeared in the DC proper since 2012. With the release of DC KO, The Kids Are All Fight, it seems like DC is once again trying to fold Static and the other Dakotaverse heroes on Milestone Media back into the main DC universe. But that being said, when you get down to the nitty gritty of it all, this is most likely just a licensing attempt to keep these characters on lock. In this wonderful video by comic historian from 8 years ago, we love you and miss you, Benny. Benny breaks down the history, the real, and the rumors surrounding Static. DC did have a push a few years back with the Milestone universe, but it only had like 2 seasons and then just silence, nothing. Now suddenly Static is being used again. It just frankly seems just a little bit hollow, like a half-assed attempt to get everyone's attention on DC KO by giving us a little carrot so everyone can go live out their power scaling fantasies. So now we get to the new history of the DC Universe, the Dakota Incident. A mutual of mine, Jay Penumbra, has a podcast called Comics Unmasked, and recently he just did an interview with Joseph Illich. If you don't know Joseph, he was one of the main editors at Milestone Comics back in the day, up to the fact that he was the editor for Hardware number 50, and was the first black editor on Batman, and was known for pushing diversity into Gotham City during his tenure. He's also a writer himself, including the fact that he is one of the writers on the Dakota Incident comic along with these wonderful writers and artists. Now, if you don't listen to Comics Unmasked, if it's wrong with you, go do that. But during his interview with JP, he said this.
We have to treat it the same way. So that trailer was made to basically be the climax to the pre-order campaign. But that is just stage 1. And a lot of people showed screenshots with evidence that they pre-ordered. They said, I'm pre-ordering all 5 covers. James, Stephanie Williams pre-ordered copies. I pre-ordered copies at my comic shop. I took a picture.
I saw you in there, yeah.
People, you don't ask someone to do something that you aren't willing to do yourself. Let me tell you what stage 2 is. Stage 2 is what I'm calling the Dakota Incident 100K Challenge. I want us to sell 100,000 copies of the Dakota Incident. 100,000 copies, which means the copies that were pre-ordered, they have to sell out. The extras, they have to sell out. If you go to your store, they don't have it, you say, hey, get me that book, I want it. If you don't have it, I'll call another shop. If they got it, I'm gonna go to them. I want that book. 100,000 copies. It's possible. Let me tell you why 100,000 copies. Because if we sell 100,000 copies of the Dakota Incident, then we can ask for a Static series. And if we don't get it, you must tell us why. You must tell us why we sold 100,000 copies of this book. And that data is not compelling enough for you to produce a static series. And if we sell 100,000 copies and we ask for a static series and we don't get it, then we have a decision to make, and then the suspicions become validated.
In the Black community, we often talk about the diversity of us in the media, whether that be TV, film, novels, or comics. From dying first in horror movies, to being the Black girlfriend whose only goal is to push the main white male character towards the white female endgame love interest, to being either the nerd or the sassy Black girlfriend, or the white man or white woman's dirty little secret in the bedroom. And frankly, I was going to initially show like some pictures of those character archetypes in the media, but I'm not wasting my time, because if you know the problems I'm talking about, you already have certain characters in mind. If you don't know what I'm talking about, then I'm sorry, you're the problem. Recently, the community is in an uproar about Captain Durag and whether or not it mattered that a Black woman created the show and character. And I brought up in another video of mine about an author named Quan Mills who, based on the titles of his books, love living in Black stereotype. And so as we are talking about wanting representation, currently when we look at comics, we are dealing with the fact that it's been over 1,000 days since DC Comics has had an ongoing Black superhero comic. And let me clear this up, because the Black community has been arguing about this too. Ongoing means it's a comic book that will keep on going as long as the sales continue. Instead, DC has only done miniseries or limited series, meaning these books have a set number of issues when they're ordered, and no matter how popular they are not getting any more. Frankly, the only recent exception to that rule is Maria Alilde's Storm, which was supposed to be a limited series until people went out and supported the book. But even with that, it only keeps getting a small amount of orders, as currently, Earth's Mightiest Mutant, the continuation of the series, is set to only be 5 issues according to solicitations. And if I'm correct, JP spoke to Maria on Threads and they were surprised that it's only 5 issues as well. And because of that, in addition to the fact that Marvel just canceled the Miles Morales book again, it's got the Black community asking, what the hell? So, back to Joseph. Before the clip I showed you, Joseph talked about how, at the end of the day, these companies want money. In the video from Comicstorian, Benny breaks down how, because of the deal between Milestone and DC, DC has to pay Milestone to use these characters, and if they're not going to make more money back than they're going to spend, then as a fair business practice, why would they push for these characters to be out there? He's probably going to be tired of me talking about him, but I'm going to keep shouting JP out, because JP also has been going on about how people don't understand that comics have to be ordered beforehand to count. Going to your store and picking up a book off the shelf does not count as a sale to DC or Marvel, because your shop has already paid them for that book. So unfortunately, if you're expecting to go in on New Comic Book Wednesday and pick up a copy, it doesn't tell DC or Marvel that there's a demand specifically for that book you're picking. Think about Kickstarter, or frankly any pre-order for a game or a book. Pre-orders let the distributor know how much demand there is for that book and how much they need to actually print out. And so having a pull list where your shop has to order books for you consistently and put them aside in a pre-order, you're saying, hey, every month I want to issue a Miles Morales Spider-Man. And there is what they call the FOC day, the final order cutoff day, for every book in which your shop has to order these books at a certain time, or depending on the popularity and availability of this book, you may not get it. A perfect example of this right now would be Absolute Batman #1, which at this point is on its 10th printing, which means it has sold out 9 times. And that is a mix of demand from the fans and comic book shops just knowing that Batman is going to sell. Batman is a safe buy. They know that whenever they buy copies of that book, pull list or not, at some point, they are going to make their money back by someone just walking in and picking it up off that shelf. But for our Black heroes, that's not the case. So, using me as an example, my original comic book shop, Omega Frog Comics, got into the habit of pulling any new Black books for either Marvel or DC whenever it came out, because they know I love supporting Black heroes. My current shop, Comic Kingdom, is starting to realize that too, which goes back again to what Joseph was trying to say. Black people, we have to put our money where our mouth is. When Milestone relaunched, I told my shop I wanted them all, except for Blood Syndicate, and that's an issue on my end because I wasn't trying to support a book that on the outside looked like it was just a bunch of gangsters turning into superheroes. I was wrong. I know that now. Don't come for me in the comments. The argument these companies largely use is that we don't support these books. Or, as both Comicstorian and Joseph said on Comics of Mass, these are the books that most people assume are only for black people. It's the idea that because you're not black, you can't connect with these characters, even though any black nerd out there can point to a white hero that they connect with. And so Joseph and the rest of the creative team are running this campaign to push us to go out and get the book. It comes out on Wednesday, February 25th. And yes, I just told you about the final order cutoff date. That's already passed. But when you go into your local comic book shop and let them know you want them to order it for you, that will be a sale. Let me explain how. Pre-orders are big, absolutely. And while no, picking the book up off the shelf isn't necessarily the sale that they are looking for, because most comic book shops will only get the copies that are for their pre-order pull list, and then maybe one, maybe two for the shelf. Asking them to specifically go back in and buy you a copy means they have to go into the system, hit up their distributor, and buy that book, which then signifies another sale. So if you go to your local comic book shop on Wednesday the 25th and have your shop order more copies of the Dakota Incident, that is a sale. And Joseph, who works in the industry, knows the magical number that will make DC pay attention to the demand for more of the milestone characters, including Static specifically. But remember what I said earlier about fair business practice? Here's where the conspiracies about how they don't like black characters start to take place. Some way, somehow, the Dakota Incident was leaked last week. And it's a known fact that when books are leaked and people think they know what the story is about, they won't go out and buy it. And for me personally, I find it odd that while DC has a whole event going on where the DC superheroes are fighting each other, as well as other characters from the Warner Brothers banner that's making them a lot of money, or as I said, Absolute Batman #1 is on its 10th printing, and Absolute Batman continues to sell well week over week, and nothing has been leaked about either that series or that book, but somehow the one black book we're getting from DC in who knows how long, that got leaked. Not to mention the fact that it was Illage and the other writers of the Dakota Incident that got together to release a trailer that was for this book specifically and the FOC day, but then DC hasn't really done any marketing for this book. In fact, on the same day that these creators took it upon themselves to release a trailer for a book that they're on, that DC themselves should have been supporting, DC released a trailer for the new Vertigo line of comics, which could be seen as once again drawing attention away from black superheroes. And say what you want, this is the same argument I had about Daredevil Born Again Season 2 trailer being dropped with Wonder Man, and they put it on YouTube instead of forcing people to go watch Wonder Man so they could see the teaser. And so this leads to a couple of things that sparked this passion project video of mine. First, there's this video by Hellspawn where he goes over how DC is playing in our face about the Dakota Incident being leaked.
So fun fact, DC Comics and WB Discovery is plotting on us black folks, y'all. On February 18th, a good amount of these pages from this book have been released out into the wild on DC Infinite's site. Now, why would that happen? These pages are released and are on pirate sites. That kind of torpedoes the book.
If you see pages online of this book, if you feel like you know what this book is about, you do not. And what I am asking you is to next week buy copies. Next week, experience it in your hand, in your home. Buy a copy for a friend. Buy a copy for a parent. Buy a copy for a kid.
This is a call to action for all of us to support not just this book, but the creators behind it. The mission behind this is all about showing that Static is an idea that can persist through generations in a way that Batman or Wonder Woman or Superman can. However, I will be honest with you, this guerrilla tactic of releasing the pages before its release, I don't like none of it. This will probably be the last time I'm going to publicly advocate for a mainstream comic book. The way that they move is evidence that we don't need to support them, because again, if they don't support us, why should we give them our dollars? At the end of the day, black heroes do matter. We need to make sure that we hold it down.
Leaked and pirated materials aren't just killing Black comics. The recent run on Green Arrow was phenomenal, but because more people were reading it on pirated websites rather than buying the book, it was canceled. So if it can kill popular white heroes like Green Arrow, what the hell do you think it's going to do to our Black heroes? In fact, side note to this, for those of you that were around when Tyler Perry was first getting started out and he was doing all the plays, that's why he has such a massive push for not buying the pirated copies of the shows. If you were going to buy a show, you need to buy it from him because pirating kills the media you're trying to support. But then after watching Hellspawn's video, I saw JP responding to Tony Weaver on Threads, and they frankly both made good points. Tony rightfully calls out DC's inability to monetize characters we know are popular, and so we're at a point where we have to ask ourselves, why do we still care? And the answer to that is because, as JP says, we are equals and we deserve to be seen as much. Tony's reply is, of course, that we have plenty of successful people out here creating their own creator-owned and led initiatives to boost positive Black stories, and that putting our time and effort in people who clearly have shown us they don't care about us is potentially what is holding us back. For me, these are two sides of the same coin. Yes, it can often hold us back, but we should also be allowed to excel in the same space. There is enough room at the table for all of us. But largely, Blacks and other minorities are told we can't play on the same stage because they just don't get it. For example, I remember talking to a 2520 coworker of mine who mentioned that their wife put on K-pop Demon Hunters and said after about 10 minutes, they turned it off because they just didn't understand it. K-pop Demon Hunters in its first 5 minutes explain who and what the Demon Hunters are. Like, I could understand if it started off with how it's done and then once the crowd cheers, it went into the exposition dump of who the hunters are. That could be a little confusing. But for you to say you don't understand when the exposition is right at the beginning, at some point there is only one other card I can play on why you didn't understand it. There are so many great creators out there who are doing great work to show us in a positive light, but unfortunately, their reach is limited. This is just the truth. Yes, social media has given us way more access to the public than we have ever had before, but we deserve to be celebrated on the biggest stages just as much as everyone else. Case in point, we all remember how we felt about the first Black Panther movie. It always talks about how his wife was working for ABC at the time and received an email from Bob Iger basically shocked about how well Black Panther did, because we still live in a world where people don't see our worth. And it means something when the biggest stages acknowledge us for it. I mean, let's be honest. Right now, we are all holding our collective butt cheeks, waiting to see if the Academy is going to give Ryan Coogler the Oscar we all know he and Sinners deserves. Because say what you want about Wakanda Forever, Auntie Angela was robbed for Best Supporting Actress, and you know it. And speaking of Sinners, it's being reported that Ryan is the first African American to win Best Original Screenplay for Sinners at the BAFTAs. The fact that Black writers, actors, and directors, etc. have been around and we're still just now in 2026 getting first as a community is insane, which is why it's still culturally relevant when we are celebrated with our peers, because that's who they are, our peers. Same job, just different skin tones. The argument of I can't connect with the story is weak when you consider that for the longest time, the stories minorities have had to connect with are predominantly white stories, and yet we're able to connect. A Walk to Remember is one of my favorite movies, starring two pieces of white bread in the South. But as a Black man living in the West, I can still connect to the idea of young love and becoming a better person for someone who deeply loves you, even before you love them. Jean Grey Phoenix is one of my favorite Marvel superheroes, and yet while I'm not an all-powerful godlike entity signifying death or rebirth for the entire multiverse, or a woman, I can still connect to the idea of being an outsider trying to fit in and do the right thing, even when the rest of the world or galaxy often sees me as a threat and a villain. Okay, all that to say here as Black History Month comes to an end is that we deserve better than these companies trying to play in our faces. And to an extent, Tony is right. We should question if it's worth it. Illich himself says the same thing in the Comments on Math podcast. We as the community did it with several companies last year when they removed DEI practices and Black products from their shelves. But we have brothers and sisters and others who are still trying to go the traditional route. And as long as they are making great stories for us to consume, we should be out there supporting them with our money and not pirating their work. Look, I love y'all, I love us. Do what you feel is best. Me? The Dakota Incident is already on my pull, but I may go back in and ask them to give me a few more copies because I do want to push to support the 100K. But I'm also out here supporting people like King and Queen Lion on Flame, or Impound Comics, or CT Scribe with The Demon Lords by Mistress. Oh, and I also write my own books, link in the bio if you want to support another Black indie creator. But honestly, in conclusion, we deserve to be seen, but we also have to know what we're worth. Happy Black History Month, everyone. Here's to celebrating 100 years of how important our history is.